Let me unmute myself. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Grin and Guardian Gang. I am glad you're here. We would like to thank the Parapost Network for allowing us to go out on their their groups. We'd like to thank the Thin Red Line. Good Lord. I'm just going to start the show over. Thin Line Rock Station for their support. And I also would like to thank Yerg's Radio. They are providing the phone number, and I'm not 100% sure that we are going out live on their network. I will be trying that momentarily. So if you have a question, you can call us in at 1-888-88-YERGZ. The chat is open. Let's see who all we got hiding backstage here. We have Miss Cheyenne. I'm unmuted, right? You can hear me.
Yes,
right?
you're good.
Yeah. It's great. We have Andy.
Hey.
Hello, Andy. And Warren. We have a guest. Warren. All right. And
going on, y'all?
Hey, what's going on, Warren? And then we have, let me find him down here. We have Chris. He
Antonio
is
Banderas.
Yeah, don't be jealous, Warren. So Chris is from the East Coast, and he has been you've been firing EMS for how long, Chris?
I'm on my 23rd year of this mess.
Yeah. It's a life sentence. So you're a paramedic too, so I feel your pain. It's been I think I've got 28 years in, so something like that, and I'm glad to be getting out. I'm waiting on my wife to retire so that we can do something different. So
you don't look a day over 27 EMS years old.
I look better than well, never mind. And I'm also not at my normal location. I'm in Tennessee helping with some family, so that also explains why I'm stressed. But so Chris, you got a book out and you've had a great career. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and then of course, we're gonna ask to see all your coins. So.
And harass you in any way possible.
Good. All right. So I've been a paramedic since 2013. I started off my emergency services career in 2001 in the summertime as a junior firefighter. So you can imagine how eye-opening the events of September of that year were for me. Over the course of now 23 years, you see your share of stuff, and the thing is, we're really good in EMS at taking the emotional aspect and completely toning it down, suppressing it, burying it all inside, and trying to look strong and heroic and just be the best thing for the person in front of us and put ourselves on the back burner. And I found over a career of doing this, eventually it just eats away at you. And I think the way I phrased it in the book
up and bite you in the butt.
100%. So the way I phrased it in the book was that we make deposits into the suppression bank, and we just let it sit there and collect interest. And then at the end of the day, we ourselves are the ones that are withdrawn. At the end of 2020, in addition to any work stress, which of course there was none of that, family life, the home life, the social life, everything that we'd been used to just did a sudden stop and exit left. And everybody was kind of working to figure life out on their own, separately, but together, and all those slogans. And I think one of the biggest pieces of communication that I missed was seeing half of a person's face. You know, if you have a bad day and you run into a familiar face and you get that little smile or the wink or whatever, that, you know, hey, like, it's going to be all right. We lost all of that with face coverings, and it was just a very sterile interpersonal relationship with everybody, and it was just a very bizarre time. So all that stress, and then compounding that with some home life stress, it had me in a really, really bad place.
You're gonna end up like the very end of Doctor Sleep, where all those boxes flip open and it just everything just
Yeah,
comes out.
sure. I grew up on Sesame Street, so that peanut butter jar, when you open it up and all the snakes come springing out, yeah, that's
Yes.
pretty much where I was at. So I had a friend that had been telling me for months, in addition to my wife who'd been telling me for months, like, talk to a counselor. And I was like, no, I don't need to do that. Like, come on, I'm the paramedic. I help people. I don't need help.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I continued to do it my way, and my way was just not successful. And this one night, just found myself in just a really nasty place, and finally decided, like, I need to text this friend and get this phone number. So I scheduled some counseling, and it was a really awkward place for me because, you know, being a paramedic, EMT, firefighter, we have a niche career. Like, the stuff that we deal with is not the stuff the general public deals with. So to talk to a psychologist about, oh yeah, well, I was running into that building while everybody else was running out, like, you're already starting the conversation off in a crazy position, and it's only going to go downhill from there, right? But that's not the case. So I ended up getting this appointment, starting things off with Zoom, which was amazing. I had to learn how to do, like, these group chat video call things, which here I am tonight. But the first question that she had asked me is, are you a Christian? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I grew up in the church. I ran away as soon as I could, but I grew up in it. And she was like, no. Like, if I make Bible references, or if I give you material to read, are you going to be okay with that? And I was like, well, I mean, if you can't help me, then sure, maybe God can. And it actually turned out to be this wild ride, because I didn't know that I was reaching out to a Christian counselor. And I didn't know that, in addition to all the physiological, psychological, and every other logical thing that I'd been going through that year, there was this whole spiritual piece that was just missing out of my life for years, and took me to this just dark humor, dark outlook. Everything was just dark. And, you know, talking to her and opening up and giving her the opportunity, I just kind of word vomited all over her. And she kind of sat there picking up the pieces. Starts texting me stuff at the same time while we're talking, which I thought was really bizarre. But at the end of our time together, I had links to podcasts. I had links to, I had, like, name and title and author of books to check out. And I actually had a reading assignment for the following week when we met, just to see what I thought about this book, because I have an hour and a half commute to work. So doing books on audio is easy. The information that we were pulling, the perspectives that we were pulling out of this material was just stuff that I had never had presented to me in the way that it was presented. You know, church growing up for me was, you know, stand up, sit down, go for a walk, sit back down, stand up, don't talk to anybody until you're told to turn around and say hi to somebody, and then walk out and run to the parking lot and be the first one out of that parking lot. Because if you're not, all that grace and mercy that you've asked for is now being challenged as you're flicking off the other drivers in the parking lot and laying on the horn to the other drivers in the parking lot. And it was frustrating. Like, why did we just spend the last hour here if this is how we're going to behave? And now, having this different perspective, it was like, okay, like, what's next? So the idea had come up to journal from having a bad day at home, from having a bad day at work, if I'm going through anything, just sit down with my journal open and just write it down. Get the thoughts out, don't bury them, just get them down on paper, put it away somewhere and let it go.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Chris, but
Go for it.
I found something very similar. I feel a lot of the same things going on with you that happened to me. You know, you're so much forced into like church as a kid. You just want nothing to do with it so long after until it's the right time for it to find you again or you to find it. But that was a big thing for me was I didn't really consider it like a diary, but it was more just it was easier than sitting there and feeling like you're having a conversation in your head, but just that, man, you know, God, it's been a crap day, and I just wish things would have went this way, but they went that way, and what do I need to do? Just point me in the right direction. And then being able to go look back over those at sometimes, you know, when things are especially rough again, and you're like, but see, I'm not there now. I'm not there anymore.
It's awesome. Yeah, so one of the things I learned is if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans.
He's like, oh, you're cute. Yeah.
Right.
Sit down and shut up.
And it's insane. I'd become so hard. Like movies on TV, it would take a very particular type of movie to actually get me to feel emotion. And most of the comedy movies that I'd been watching, like it was just to get the one-liners to quote later to be, you know, increasingly funny. Although the comedy genre nowadays is not what it used to be. It's not, you know, Dumb and Dumber. It's now just very raunchy comedy. And most of the one-liners you don't repeat anywhere.
I want to hear some good fart jokes that I can tell later on.
Well, I mean, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. And sometimes they stink, but, you know, the,
you did there.
Yeah, the point being that just like the influences that I'd had in my life at that point were just not helpful. Going through this process of journaling and like writing stuff down and actually working through it and organizing it and getting some flow to it on paper was just an emotional process in itself, especially after a miserable day at home, a miserable day at work, a miserable commute, whatever it was.
But it's such a sigh of relief too, though. To have that
it is. Yeah. So my wife had been working. Oh, go ahead, Glenn.
I was just going to say, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I think it's the right thing to do, but that is the hardest thing for me to do. And I don't know why.
I
mean, it is. My wife's thrown books. I mean, given me books to, you know, write stuff down. And for some reason, that is the hardest thing for me to, and I don't know why.
Well, what if somebody picks it up and reads it?
Well, you know, I'm an open book, but it was very hard for me to reach out and start therapy. Because I'm like, who's going to want to listen to my bull crap that people have got stuff so much worse going on? Just sit down and take it. Because I was going to ask, curious with your experience, did you stick with the same person that, like you got connected to, or did you have to go through like several therapists or psychologists to find somebody that fit you?
I got really lucky. And my counselor is phenomenal. She, gosh, like we would talk about stuff and she would know exactly what book to send to me. And so above and beyond that time that we were hashing stuff out, I had these other resources, you know, books by guys that are talking about like guy stuff and, you know, being that father for your kids, being a decent husband, like how to kind of navigate the world in that way. And that was some of the most helpful stuff. So we come back to the table, you know, to the Zoom, and talk about like and to discuss like what I pulled out of that. And there were certain references made in the book that she'd be like, okay, well, when you get to Samson grabbing a hold of the pillars and knocking them down, what are you naming your pillars? And I was like, man, this is awesome. So like,
It's deep.
and I didn't understand the first time, because even the author was like not talking about naming the pillars.
Yeah.
But then to make that connection, I was like, okay, cool. So, his one last request for strength, one more time, to just push everything down. And it was just like, oh, great. Like, this is going to be bigger than the Colosseum was. I've got so many pillars, and we're going to call them dominoes. It's just an incredible experience. So yeah, I was lucky enough to have just the one.
Joined.
But then so much more happened with this. My wife was working one night, doing the overnight retail, like flip your store type of a thing. And
Like
she's
the
responsible for making
merchandising.
sure that, yep. She's responsible for making sure that when your eye hits that store, it goes front to back to the front, and you've already spent your retirement before you've taken 2 steps in the door. And she was fantastic at it. So she's working overnight one night, and I got the kids to bed early because they were tired, and I didn't have my journal. I left it at work, which, big mistake and kind of a anxiety attack for me, because like, oh, who's going to read this?
Where am I going to put it?
Yeah.
Right.
If you work in a firehouse too. Yeah. I get it.
Sure. But
So how old
I
are
had
you,
the,
sir?
what's that?
How old are you?
38.
38.
So I sat down with my laptop because I didn't have my journal, and I just started going. And I started around 7:00 that night, and just, we sorted through a lot. And at 3:00 in the morning, I texted my wife, and I was like, hey, I'm going to bed. I did something. I'm terrified of it, but we'll talk about it in the morning. And at that point,
But
I
gosh
had
dang it, I did it.
I had 68 pages of the book done.
Holy
Wow.
cow.
Is that your
and
outlet?
It was 100% my outlet. So much. I laughed at some of the stories. I'm talking about, my enlistment, and my being my dad's rock through his divorce and everything, with his struggles and our time together, just being the rock for him. And at times feeling like I was raising him at the same time that he's trying to raise me, and having that moment, swearing into the Army, getting ready to hit the plane, and he's just outside crying like I've never seen my dad cry. And it was just like working through that moment and capturing that was just heartbreaking for me. And at the same time was a ton of bricks just lifted, just so much stuff from decades of life that just all came out in this mess. So I sent it off to my counselor, and she was like, all right, so are you going to finish your book? And I was like, no, I'm not finishing this book. I'm not doing anything with this book. Nobody needs to see this book. And she was like, so if your experience could speak to one person who was at the end of their rope and who was ready to take their life, would it be worth sharing your story? So, yeah, actually. And it's one of the points that I made early on in the book and at the very end of the book. Like, this is one life among millions of people in this career. People have had bad days since the beginning of time. And in our job, it tends to be a really, really bad day. So to be able to reach out to somebody who's going through it heavy, having lost 5 colleagues in a very short period of time to suicide, it was just something that was kind of a confidence boost for myself in that, like, if I can show somebody that I wasn't afraid to come out and say, look, life's hard. I couldn't do it on my own. I needed help. Somebody else may take that example and follow it and not end up as a statistic or a headline. And that was the most important thing for me.
Give other
But
people the confidence to say it's okay
to not
seek
be
help.
okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's actually a I don't want to call it a catchphrase, but when we go through SISM, that's one of the things we tell them, that you're having perfectly normal reaction to an abnormal situation. It's okay to not be okay.
Right.
That's one of the things that they teach us.
Acute stress, depression, like all that bottles up and all that gets put into that suppression bank. It's just this wild thing that, and it's not like I woke up one day and said, oh, life stinks. Like, it's just a walk down a path a step at a time. Like, nobody goes to career day and says, nope, I don't need this because I'm jumping off a bridge. Like, that never happens. That's not how this works. It's a step down a path, and eventually that path gets steep. Exactly. And after so many years, like,
How
it
much
is just
more can they take?
Exactly. So that ended up being the goal of publishing the book. And really,
a publisher? Did you go through a publisher?
So I was looking at the traditional publishing route, and some aspects of it I liked. For instance, publicity, like having somebody who has a clue about marketing to actually like get word about the book out would have been beneficial. Signing a book contract and being tied to a contract to produce so many books in such a period of time was not something I was looking for. Okay. So Amazon has Kindle Direct Publishing, where you can create a paperback, a Kindle ebook, or a hardcover. So I went and did that initially. And it took me 2 years to come back and link up with Audible to find a producer to do the audiobook. And I found a guy with a great voice. Some of the feedback that I've gotten from that, though, is that they really wish that I would have read it. Some of the readers I've had who know me and have been around me for years, oh, you should have been the one to read it.
I was gonna say, I think you have a great voice to be able to read it.
But the book in my hands is still a lot.
That's fair.
And just last week, I spent 4 hours on the lazy river with my book, making circles, just reading through this and catching up, just mostly because I wanted to make sure, like, when I'm coming on here, that structural aspects and stuff, if as the discussion changes to like the content, like how I have it laid out and stuff. But it was a lot to just sit there and read that on my own after not picking it up. And I'm not psychotic. I'm not sitting here reading cover to cover every day in this book. But through this counseling, through all the material, I'd gotten a completely different picture of church. Started to research and look into churches near me. And I stumbled across this rock concert that it looked like the setting was in like a basement comedy club. And then when the pastor got up to start talking, it solidified that concept of a nightclub or a comedy club. I laughed so hard for an hour. And at the end of that hour, I'd gotten so much depth out of that sermon, and I had no idea how it was done. It wasn't boring. It was so engaging. At no time did I like want to get up and run away. So I ended up going to the church with my kids the first time because my wife was working, and we had this plan. It was awesome. You guys are going to stay right with me. You're going to sit in the seats, and when you get bored, let me know. And we're going to get up and we're going to leave, and we're not ever going to come back. and it'll will be in and out. Don't talk to strangers. Stay right with me. But we get into the doors, and the children's director is like right there near the kids sign in, and she squats down, puts her arms open because she saw two new faces, and my kids bailed. They were gone right to her. They ran to the stranger. They were taking hugs from the stranger. And I was like, oh, well, this is fantastic. There goes my plan. So I sat down, stayed for the service, and I just sat there afterwards, just mind blown that something so new could feel so familiar. And like, I just found something that was missing, and real people who aren't there to judge you based on like what you wore to church that day. They're just excited that you showed up and that you're there. And like, they talk throughout, and, you know, very good at greeting and want to engage you in conversation because you're a new face, and they don't want to hit you with the Bible in the head. They don't want to pry. They just want to express like, thank
Their
you for coming.
appreciation.
And it was insane. It was insane. And I got hooked, and it turned out to be 1 week after the other. I was sitting in church crying because so much of what he was saying was hitting home directly. And I asked him the one day, I was like, how are you doing this? And he looks right at me with a
Get
straight
out of
face,
my
and he says, well, I go through all your mail and your wife emails me. And I was like, if I didn't know better, I would swear that you were being completely honest right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
It was insane. So I kept learning more and wanting to dig deeper. And it took, it was Veterans Day of 2020 that I went for the first time, the weekend before Veterans Day. And July 4th of 21, I was baptized. And this last fall, I just started the seminary. So I'll be moving along in ministry.
Wow.
To provide something very near and dear to my heart that I had at a previous EMS job that I just was not in a place in life to appreciate. We had chaplains that rode along as like a third person on the ambulance, and they always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. They'd pray with the patients that were open to it. They would just counsel the patients that weren't. And went through a bad call. We went through it together. I wasn't talking to some, psychologist or something after a call who wasn't there, who doesn't know what we do, who's just on the payroll for when something bad happens. It was talking to this chaplain who's gotten the training to be able to counsel and talk through the same run that they themselves experienced in a different way, looking at it from a biblical worldview versus where we were. And that was the most, in hindsight, probably the most beneficial thing I've witnessed in my life, but it was at a time that I couldn't fully appreciate it. And I think that, you're not supposed to look back and dwell on regrets, but I think that's one thing I can honestly say that I regret not being more open to it. We would show up Sunday morning and go to his church and listen to him preach in the mornings. And if we got a call, we left. So I wouldn't necessarily dive as deep into that service as what I've been doing now that I've rediscovered what it can be like. And it was just this paramount spot for me. And it got to a point that I didn't know what to do with it. Like the manuscript, like, what do I do with this thing now? And a movie had come out in March of 23 called Jesus Revolution. And they were bringing hippies into traditional churches, and it was scaring the membership of the traditional churches, but it was following the story of this kid who doesn't have a great relationship with his mom. He turned to any drug he could find and was really into the hippie movement. And this girl that he was pursuing exited that crowd after a tragedy and found this church and invited him to go. And in just the same way as I've been doing for the last 3 years, I found this church. I invited my wife, my kids were all active with them. I invite anybody that I come across, hey, come check this out on Sunday. In that same word of mouth, inviting people to church, the hippies that everybody was saying, we can never save these hippies. They're all lost cause. We're actually getting into a church, getting saved and having a relationship with Jesus and coming off the drugs, coming off the alcohol and like tuning in. And to kind of see that played out in the church that I found, and to see that movie and to see that kid get handed the keys to an abandoned church that his pastor bought for him and told him that he's going to do great things, it was like speaking to me in this fence, like, am I capable of doing this? And then I had a rough night at work, and it's 4:30 in the morning last September or October, and I was standing outside having a cigarette, and our trash truck comes through, drives past me, and stops. There's no stop sign there. He just stops, puts it in reverse, and starts backing up. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't want to talk to anybody right now. I'm not giving you a cigarette. Like, just go away. So the truck stops backing up. The cab lights come on after he throws it in park. So he's now opened his door. He's getting out, and he comes walking right up to me, and he's like, hey, I just wanted to say, thank you for all that you do. And now at this point, I'm super defensive because I'm like, he's going to ask me for a cigarette. He's going to ask me what's the worst thing I've ever seen, this, that, and the other thing. And he stopped and he says, I don't know where you're at with everything in life, but I just wanted to tell you that Jesus loves you. And when you get a second, go look at Isaiah 50:10. And it's this verse about, those of us wandering in the dark, having faith in Jesus. And I was working night shift, so ergo, I'm wandering in the dark. And it was just the most appropriate verse for that time, for the night that I was having, for the fence that I was sitting on. And I just went back in and I finished my application to school. I got into seminary with a late start into the fall semester, so I doubled my coursework. Not a great idea, but we got through it and finished my first year of the seminary program. And then I get to resume that again this fall for the bachelor's in Christian ministry, hoping to take what I had seen previously with the chaplains and try to duplicate that here, where a lot of our chaplains are a great resource. You can reach them on office hours. When there's ceremonies, they come out. If there's a banquet, they'll pray over a meal. They'll give a benediction before ceremonies. And that's great. But the chaplain that I had, the same chaplain that married my wife and I, knew our families, knew that we were having an off day when we walked in the door, checked on me every day while my wife was having the worst pregnancy ever, asking me, hey, like, how are you holding up with this? And I had to be, strong for myself and be like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Inside, I'm screaming. I'm like, I don't want anything bad to happen with this pregnancy, and I don't want anything bad to happen to my wife. But I had to put on this smiley face and be there for everybody and be, the strong person in the field, be the strong person at home. And I just had to suppress everything and just continue to build it and build it and build it. And there's a lot of that actually in the book, that piece of my story, just kind of going through and looking at the fact that, like, we all have lives outside of work. We all have these stressors that are at home waiting for us. When the day is done and we punch out at work, there's still bills to be paid. There's still chores to be done. There's still lawn needs mowed. There's all kinds of stuff waiting for you when you get home. My wife will tell you flat out, it'll take me months to put my laundry away. I will have a basket full of clean clothes piled up just because, like, I come home and I want to sit. I want to watch a movie with the kids. I want to do anything to just get out of the day and transition into the home and be present. And that, to me, is like the most important thing, is having that home presence. And it's taken me a very long time in this field to understand a work and home balance and the importance of that.
It's hard,
but it has taken it's terrible, and it took one night of everything just popping out of that peanut butter jar.
I'm
that
I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason. You weren't ready.
No.
Other things he had to show you first.
Again, if I would express my plans, he would laugh.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. And one of the weirdest things that
100%.
I've found is among like our BLS, someone's having a bad day, or one of our neighboring agencies in the last 2 days had a tragic car crash. They've reached out to me. Like,
Good.
I was in
Good.
a place 4 years ago where if somebody reached out to me, I didn't have time for them. I was too busy worrying about my plans, my course, me, my number one. And just to be able to open up and to be able to share and be like, look, I've been through this before, or, I think that what you're doing is great. I'm going to encourage you to pursue this education. I think it's a great idea for you. And make sure that everyone in your family is on board, because it's going to be a financial toll. It's going to be whatever, and to be able to like give advice like directly from the heart to people that I've had a conversation with or multiple conversations with, to be able to just kind of have these little touch bases and have them reach out is insane to me. That, like, first of all, that I even have that capacity, because for 19 years in EMS, I was just going to be this amazing firefighter one day with an EMT certificate on the wall, to make myself more marketable as a fire officer. And honestly, like, my path was already laid and I was making treads down it, but I had to experience a lot of heartache in the process in order to see full circle that my experiences could be the catalyst to have somebody just never put a pistol in their mouth, right?
And even if those couple of words might have not meant a lot to you, who knows what they could mean to somebody else.
All right. So that was heavy. Yeah, no, it's wild to me that, and even taking like Christian counseling classes through school, like, somebody's going to come to me one day with their stuff in the same place that I was, and I'm going to have that experience to be able to relate and say, you know what? I know.
Been there.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But,
just remember, you got to carry their burden too there for a bit. So it's not easy to do.
No, it's not. But I know someone who carried a cross a very long way for me and went through a whole lot worse. And I think that if I can at least strive with the effort of a mustard seed to be that person, I think that I can at least do some good for somebody. Yeah. Even if it's just endorsing that they pick up the double-edged sword.
I say that because when I started on my, I don't even know what I want to call it right now, where I'm at, I was on duty. I had developed a brain disease.
Your journey.
Yeah, I was on my journey. Yeah, I had developed a brain disease and my wings were clipped and I couldn't fly anymore. And they told me, well, you can't go back to an ambulance or a fire engine. So I tried the doctor's office for a while and I was like, okay, I can beat this. I'm tougher than this. And that was already my second strike, remind you. I had a roof fall on me at the first fire department job and mess up my neck. And anyhow, so I got back in shape. I pushed myself and found a department that was willing to hire a 50, I don't know what the heck I was in, 52-year-old man. I don't know.
They were willing to hire an old fart.
Well, no, I had a paramedic patch. Let's just be honest about it. And so,
have letters, we'll travel.
Yeah, exactly. You have a pulse and a patch. And so I got hired there. It was a small department. I was much happier because I had worked in an inner city department. This was a small city, but I'd worked in inner city Atlanta. And Originally, when I started my journey in EMS, I was in the rural areas of East Tennessee where you'd have an hour transport time. When I moved to Atlanta, right after 9/11, my transport times were anywhere from a minute and a half to max 20 minutes. So we didn't get to play paramedic as much. Now on the plane, we did when I was a flight paramedic, and I enjoyed that. But now I was on an engine, small department. We didn't have as many of the violent crimes and things, but we did have our share. We were extremely busy. Then COVID hit. Changed everything. Like you said, everybody's now got to wear a mask. We got to check our temperature when we walk in the building. We're out at the station. They don't want us hanging out within 10 feet of each other. There was a bunch of stupid rules.
You look
administrators
at something wrong and you're getting sick.
The county commissioner wanted us written up because we're on a 24-hour shift. There was 3 of us in the truck together. She saw us and we didn't have our masks on. She said they're violating city policy. They don't know where they've been for those 48 hours they were off, so they're supposed to be wearing a mask inside that truck. She tried to write us up, and I about lost my mind. I was like, really, you people, that's stupid. So
Good luck getting me to sign it, buddy.
So we started having some difficulties. The call volume was going up. And then they brought in this thing called a squad, where we're going to take the paramedics off the engine because firemen don't run medical calls. So the paramedics were not real happy with this because we were put from our engine and our crew to a disgruntled firefighter for 24 hours at a pickup with Band-Aids. And we were running, there's 2 of them in the city. We were running every medical call. No fires, no wrecks. Well, I mean wrecks, but nothing non-medical. And we were running 24 plus calls a shift. And we were getting wore out. And so they finally developed a rotation where it wasn't really, I'll say fair or great, but they developed a rotation where we weren't always on it. This is a long story. I'll get to the end. I promise. And so one of the squads was on a call for a seizure patient, and he was post-ictal. He was MR. I'm trying to think what's the correct wording for MR now, Chris. He was less developed as an adult. And so when he came out of the seizure, when you're post-ictal, your brain hasn't had enough oxygen, you want to fight. They declared a mayday on the radio because he was fighting them. He was a pretty big fella. And so I grabbed my sergeant and I said, hey, they're our first dude. They're right around the corner. They just did a mayday. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, they're fighting. And so we hop in the engine, we go over there, and this is where time slowed down for me. I remember when I opened I was behind the driver and I opened the door and looked down. I was like, damn it. He put me in a ditch. I can't jump down. I'm old now. I can't just jump out of fire trucks. So I get down, and my sergeant takes off like a bat of hell at around the front of the fire truck running. And in my head, I'm thinking, all my training, we don't run on calls. That's the absolute wrong thing to do. So I start moseying down the driveway. I mean, I know our guys are fighting, but it's to the front porch. And I hear this voice in my head say, don't get bit. And I look on the front porch. I've been a medic, I don't know, at this point, it's 20 some years. And I see these little chihuahuas. I'm like, oh, I got steel-toed boots. I can punt these little suckers. And so data clear. I hear the driver behind me. That sound when they're putting the wheel chalk down, that metal in the concrete. You probably have heard it a million times. Can still hear it in my head. Heard that. And his voice in my head screams, don't get bit. What in the Sam hell? First, am I going crazy? I'm hearing voices in my head. I look up from the front porch, and they're still, it's like a melee out of a comic book in a Batman movie. I mean, they're rolling around, throwing punches and stuff. And I'm seeing these little chihuahuas, they're smacking them off. And I'm thinking to my head, I'm like, I got this. I can punt the little sucker. And here's where it really gets weird. I felt something in my hand that felt like a tap, my left hand. And the very first thing that came through, that wasn't the first thing. Then I feel sudden, intense pain, and I'm being jerked to the ground. I'm being attacked by a pit bull. Didn't realize it. And the first bite First hole all the way through my hand. This was the center of the palm of my hand. Thought that went through my head was, well, that's what he felt when he drove a nail through it. It didn't hurt that much. I don't know where that came from because that's not me. I'm not that guy to think that way. And so now I'm fighting with a dog for my life, and no one sees me. And I'm between the engine and a fight on the front porch. I mean, I'm literally a driveway away. And so I went through all these things in my head. It was like I said, time slowed down. And I finally, before I was all the way going to the ground, that my steel toe boot got a good kick in the sternum, and she took off running. And I looked down, and of course there's blood running out of my glove. My 2 fingers are hanging, and I'm like, this ain't good. I go up there, and the first thing I start screaming is like, get some drugs. I'm like, I'm going to need a little help with that.
Get me some too.
Houston, we have a problem. And from that moment on, by the administration, I was treated as the enemy. They didn't call an ambulance for me. They told me to drove myself to the hospital, which I refused because, well, I need help here. And
you do have a hole in your hand.
They didn't even do a patient care report on me. They violated state law. I mean, I'll be honest, well, the lawyer pointed that out in the lawsuit. And if you're listening, Chief, yeah, you're a dumbass. Well, the legal stuff's over, Andy. So from that point on, I was the bad guy with the department. They told the guys not to talk to me. My friends, I know their kids, I know their wives. You know the story. You're part of their family as well as they're a part of yours. They couldn't speak to me. I couldn't come on city property. Long story, I go through. I know I said long story short, but I go through all the surgeries. I'm doing everything I can to get back. They're trying not to let me come back. And the orthopedic surgeon, he was the same one that works on the Atlanta Braves and the Georgia Bulldogs, and the Hawks, all the pro teams in Atlanta. He's a great guy, great surgeon, love him to death. And this one appointment, I'd taken my wife there because I was like, look, you're in the medical field too. You know, she's a scrub nurse. I'm like, you work with me here. I'm trying to get the doctor to sign this paper. And he told me, I'm not going to release you. At that moment, something inside of me snapped. And I was like a little baby. I mean, I was just like crying and boohooing. I'm like, no. You understand? This is all I've wanted to do my entire life. This is all I know how to do. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, Glenn, you have PTSD. And I'm like, you're an orthopedic surgeon. Come on, give me a break. I know better. You can't make this diagnosis. Obviously, in a medical field, you can. But so I started the new process now of not only was I physically injured and was never going to come back, I'm mentally injured. Now I'm really the bad guy. So I got the workers' comp. My first experience with counseling was workers' comp counselors. And like you said, it was during that time where you do it all over this, like this. Mm-hmm. After my second session, the counselor asked me, he gave me some books and told me things to read. He wasn't spiritual. He asked me, he goes, where did all of these bad things happen? And I said, well, this part of the county. And he's like, I live there. I'm like, yeah, well, it's not a great neighborhood. I made him cry. I made my counselor cry. And he refused to see me after that. So my first experiences were not as great as yours. I literally had him.
That's why I had asked. That's why I had asked before, because the first guy that I got connected with, because the reason why I started going can be a very sensitive topic, and at the time I was just not in a good headspace. So as soon as he asked me about it, I just start blubbering like a baby, and he's just sitting there going, well, I think you're medicated enough. I'm like, I'm not trying to be medicated. I'm trying to get over trauma. Help me.
They love your pills.
And he's
Yeah,
like,
they're good.
yeah, I don't think this is gonna. So it took me a year after that to find somebody else to talk to, because it was just, I'm like, no, I'm not, I don't want to be medicated. I need you to help me to figure out how to get over this, or at least cope with it a lot better than I am right now.
Well, I did get lucky. The second person they put me in touch with was an actual psychiatrist. And once again, don't know how I got this. I got the best psychiatrist. He was the head of Emory. That he taught at Emory. He was the guy overcharged of teaching all the psychiatrists and psychologists. And he was doing workers' comp cases here and there. And once again, like, I ended up with the best orthopedic surgeon in Atlanta. Now I actually have the best psychiatrist in Atlanta. And him and I connected. And he said, you know, I had PTSD. I needed a counselor. He recommended EMR and all these things. And he said, but we're never going to find one that is right for you. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, the things you say are things we teach in textbook. And they don't know how to relate to, most people don't know how to relate to you. And I'm like, well, that's not very helpful, doc. I mean, you know, and he said, so we're going to have to work very hard to find you one. He goes, but the problem is I can only work for you while we're at workers' comp, which he ended up afterwards. Like I said, I can say all this stuff now. He ended up afterwards keeping in touch with me and getting me to somebody better. But like you were saying, it's difficult for us to open up to just anyone. And it's also difficult for you on that end to relate to me, because, you know, if we get to going, we can get into details real quick, just even amongst ourselves, telling war stories that aren't fit for public. You know, does that make sense?
100%. Absolutely.
And so they may not be prepared for processing that information. So,
And you know, I think the greatest thing that my therapist said to me after I explained to her what got me to where I am now, she's like, you know, it's not your fault, right? That was the biggest thing she could have said to me. And I was just like, okay.
well, and that was also hard for me. She said, stop using the word, what was I calling it? I wasn't calling it an attack. I was just saying it was bid. It was no big deal. And she says, you're a victim. Admit it. I'm like, no, I was there to help. That's no. And she said, that's where it all switched. You became part of the call. And I'm like, well, but I'm a part of every call. And she's like, no. You became a part of that, and your identity, your role, everything switched in that moment. And that's what you're not processing. So that was hard for me to get to admit too. You know, because like I said, we're there to help.
You're there to help the victims not become one.
Right.
Yeah, well, one of my instructors said we're problem solvers. When people are having a bad day, they dial 911, whether their water pipes leaking, whether their kids choking, their grandmother's having a heart attack. We're the problem solvers. It's our job to show up and turn off the water, to get grandma to the hospital, to get the kid breathing again. And when we can't solve the problem is when we start to develop problems. And in addition to holding it in, which is a great trait of public safety.
Well, and I think that gets very scary too, when, you know, you're used to being the problem solver and now you can't solve your own problem per se.
Yeah.
There's a
And
great deal of anxiety with that.
We all make it a part of our identity. Like that movie Backdraft from, I guess, early 90s. There's a line in there that goes, the thing about firemen is even when they're off shift, they're still firemen. Like the job just stays with you. It becomes a part of who you are. It's the social circles you build. It's the networks you create. And everything revolves around the job. And when you take that adrenaline hit, that dopamine hit, the job job gives you away, it's devastating because, like you said before, this is all you know how to do. What else are you supposed to do with your life? And you kind of hit this crisis point where everything that you've known or thought you knew about yourself is now in question, because who are you going to be tomorrow?
Yeah.
And it's devastating.
It is. My first department I worked with in Atlanta, DeKalb, has now got a great critical incident stress management team. Trial by error, because they started losing so many retirees or people on the job. When you run police calls, well, when you run police MVAs with fatalities and there's no skid marks, there's an issue. And we ran multiple of those. So it took them a while, the county a long time to wake up, but they started waking up, and now they're reaching out to us retirees. I haven't been brave enough to go to one yet, but I do communicate with a lot of the guys, and actually probably a couple of them are watching tonight. But it is not easy to open up to just anybody.
Right.
It is hard. And
I think it's so important too, though, to have that outside perspective. Somebody who the most they know is a brief summary of your medical history. They don't know you as a person. They don't know your story. So they are that, like, almost unbiased third party coming in and giving you, like, they're not telling you everything you want to hear.
Yeah.
Like your friends or family might be.
A lot of them give bad advice, especially your coworkers in that job. They'll be like, all right, let's go have a drink. Let's, well, you know the routine. Let's go have a drink. Let's go do something else and get the destructive behavior, the adrenaline rush. But yeah, this is why my wife pushed me to start doing this, to doing shows, because I was losing my mind. I mean, honestly, and it's been a journey, and I'm still on trying to figure out where the heck I am. I wish my friend Jason was in here. He is in the seminary here in Tennessee. They have a program for firefighters, paramedics, cops. That is, I'm going to say this wrong because I don't know. It's a church-based program, and they are really making bounds to get outside the state of Tennessee with this program. I wish he was in here tonight. I texted him and asked him to join the chat. But
is it Reboot?
It might be. It sounds familiar. And
I've just recently reached out to them to see what they're all about. Their program for general trauma, for like military. It's a faith-based community, and we actually had to do a discussion board post in the one psychology class that I'd taken, one counseling class rather. And one of the things that I had said after reading that article, and it was an older article, was, this is amazing. Where is this for EMS? And then recently Reboot has shown up for first responders, and I'm like, this is incredible. Like, how do I collaborate with them? How do I get this program to have in my back pocket that, like, multiple agencies come together on a nasty scene, or a lot of personnel from one agency come on a nasty scene? How do I bring Reboot to them and go through it? And it's a multiple week program. So, with a swing type of a shift, it's really hard to commit to like one day a week to do stuff like that. But I'm still in the process of looking into that. I think the program is excellent, and I think it would be highly successful for first responders. But yeah.
Yeah, I will put you two in touch, because he is one of the state of Tennessee group members or team members. So I know I'm saying it wrong, but it's been very successful in Tennessee, and they're trying to get it outside of Tennessee. And I think
that's amazing.
And I talk to Jason a lot. We've been friends forever. In fact, we actually met. I was a dispatcher, and he ran a call, and we gave it out as a non-emergency. And long story short, they get there, airway breathing, circulation, or airway breathing. Can you walk to the cot? You know, and they get on the cot, and she immediately goes into arrest. And here I sent them there by themselves, and for somebody who had the flu, and now suddenly they're in the wrong part of town. They showed up late, and now suddenly this person they've walked to the stretcher is no longer there. Not a good fit for that community and for the time. And
Right.
So he called, I need help. I need PD. I need fire. I need everybody. And I'm like freaking out going, what did I do wrong? And that was actually how we first met. They sat us down. Knox County 911 sat us. I was with them. And he was with Rural Metro Fire EMS. And they sat us down and said, we got to talk about this call. And that was my first experience with critical incident stress. And so that was how we met. But that ended up being a big deal because they pulled the audio tapes. It was on the TV. It was in the wrong part of town, but it turned out there was a doctor at Baptist Hospital pushing it that it had started wrong because they didn't get there for 30 minutes and the ambulance didn't do anything when they got there. And then, so the doctor was really pushing us. Well, it turns out that she had done like the night before, like nothing but vodka and cocaine, and didn't tell any of us that. And so, and she was a really young lady too. So yeah, it was a big deal. And that's how we met him. And, through a bad call. And that we've been best friends ever since. So, but yeah, I will get you two in touch because he's big into that in Tennessee.
That'd be great. Yeah, so two of the things that I advocate for, like heavily in the book, is to build your support network. People that immediately when the call happens, you can make that phone call, and you know that this is going to be a non-judgmental phone call. This is going to be like, hey, I just need to talk in your ear for a minute and get this off my chest. Have the people that are going to be able to support you and follow up with you, because CISM is a great program, and some of the challenge that I see with it is when you have a large group of multiple agencies, it's really hard to individually reach out a week later, a month later, a year later to each person that's there and be like, hey, how have things been going for you? Have you been sleeping okay? So having your own support network that's not going to say, all right, cool, I'll meet you at the bar about an hour after work. How's that sound? Like, no, that's a step down the destructive path, where it's being able to go and grab, a meal at Panera or something afterwards and just talk about what you're going through and just bring your heart rate down, bring your blood pressure down, and just have that community, that ability for the community to kind of debrief you. And that's one of the great things I found within our church, that I can call any number of people and just be like, hey, I just need you to listen for a minute. And if there's feedback given, great. If there's not, I know that I'm not getting judged for the conversation. I'm not getting chastised for the conversation. And the thing is, like, everybody's going to have like their support network in some way. They're going to have their people. So last year I was on a fatal fire, and afterwards our chief had come up to the ER to check on all of us. And he asked me two questions, and the first one I kind of expected, and the second one caught me off guard, and I'm super appreciative of it. First, obviously asking, hey, are you all right? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. But the second question then was, would you tell me if you aren't? And I looked, and I was very honest. I said no. And it wasn't to be mean, and it wasn't to like be off-putting or anything or to build a wall. it's just the fact is, like, you're not my person. And like, I've got my speed dial core people that as soon as I have a bad day, like, I'm calling you. And in hindsight, I was like, man, that probably came off really harsh. Like, no, I wouldn't tell you. But like, at the same time, like, if I would be reaching out to someone within the EMS community, even somebody that has reached out to me previously about something, and they're just like, hey, yeah, I'm doing great, I don't really want to talk about it right now. I get it. Like, I'm not going to be everybody's person. I don't want to be everybody's person. But I 100% want to be a set of shoulders that, like, you can lean on. And if it's just step one in your healing process of just having a listening ear that's not going to turn around and be a running mouth, like, by all means, you know, let me in on it. Like, what can I do?
I'm not that person for you, but if you need me to be, I'm there.
Right.
Well,
Right.
That's great. I was just gonna say that's great. He asked that because a lot of officers don't. That's a good officer. But you're right.
And both questions.
Answer most of us will give them.
100%. And I'm very appreciative that, you know, he checked. And the thing that just blew my mind was that follow-up question, you know, if you weren't, would you tell me? And like, for me, just to be able to just say no was almost therapeutic in itself. That, like, no, and I'm okay with that. It was just such a relief. But then, like, in addition to the support network, like, what are your things you do outside? You know, like you said, your wife said you were going stir crazy, so you started doing these shows. You know, if there's anything outside of work that is not related to the job, and I don't mean like, okay, I'm a paramedic by day and I'm a volunteer firefighter by night. Like, find something outside of that niche to do, whether it's playing catch with a kid in the front yard, you know, participating. My daughter is doing all-star competitive cheerleading. I didn't know the first thing about it, but I'm there for her and I'm present in that time. Like, whatever's happening at work, when I'm at that gym watching her practice, when I'm at the competition watching her compete, it's me present there, 100% into it, cheering on the cheerleaders, 90% of the time not having a clue what I'm cheering about, but they look like they're doing something really good. Other people are cheering. I'm going to cheer along. It's that full investment in the time at home versus that time at work, and being able to set those boundaries to separate the two. You know, our organization has come up with platoon volleyball games. I think we've had 2 now, where the different platoons go at each other and we find the grand champion. And that's nice. It's definitely a change of pace for the staff. But if I just ran the worst call of my life with the 3 of you,
You're not gonna be.
I'm probably not
going to be around us.
Not even so much that, but I'm going to have a harder time separating the hurt from the happy in that moment. Like, there's not a solid divide. There's not a solid boundary. But I love that we have that ability, and we have that community, and we have the people who are able to come out and support that, because it's a really great thing. And
that is.
But yeah, if you like bowling, go bowling. Don't carry a radio. Turn off the scanner app. You know, don't focus on where the lights and siren passing the bowling alley are going. Like, just focus on knocking those pins down.
Get you some coloring books, Glenn.
Coloring book, journal. For me, church. I'm always going to recommend church, because, like, it would be one thing for me to go to the community of friends that I've had previously and be like, hey, I just had the worst call of my life. And I'm probably going to get the same perspective from the EMS community, you know, that I'm approaching this call with. where now I'm getting people from all different walks of life whose only goal is to lift each other up. And it gives that ability to have multiple different perspectives and seeing things in a different way, seeing it from that biblical worldview versus our worldview that we tend to have on the job. And it just, it's still mind blowing. And like the fact that I'm halfway through seminary and my mind is still blown, I'm guessing is a really good thing because I'm learning something. But just the shift, the complete life shift from doing that. So I will always recommend, like, just come one Sunday. Check it out. If you don't like it, don't ever come back. We're going to give you a free gift for showing up. And on Father's Day, we throw axes in the parking lot. So come on out and have a blast. Like,
I need to find this church.
right. And it's like Mother's Day this year, they had a bouquet bar. So after the service, the moms would come out and like build their own bouquet with just this multitude of flowers, like personalized bouquets.
I love that.
We did
That's super
mimosas last year, and it was, you could get a glass of orange juice in a plastic flute on your way into church. And we called it mimosas. It was very involved in so many different activities and just trying to make it fun to come to church and to be social with everybody. And, those of us that volunteer, we have a pool party coming up next month. I look back to the church of my childhood, my parents' faith, my grandparents' faith. There weren't any pool parties. Like,
I was gonna say, it almost kind of breaks a little bit of the like societal norms for church too.
Right. But so did our fearless leader, Jesus. I mean, the Pharisees called him out at the dinner party saying, why are you hanging out with these tax collectors and her? Do you know where she's been? Do you know what she's done? And, these people are sinners and these people are sinners. And I mean, they're going full out Oprah Winfrey on the sinners. And Jesus is like, well, it's not the healthy who need a doctor. And that's just to have that modeled and just be able to reach out. Like the motto is, we don't look down on anybody unless we're reaching a hand to lift them up. And that just, the first time I heard that come out of the pastor's mouth, man, it just resonated so hard because, all life long, like, yeah, there's people that are going to listen to you. They're going to want to hear what you say, but in 5 minutes, they're sharing your business like everywhere else. And you're not getting any support out of it. You're more or less just information at that point. And
That
like I
was
said,
that was more like the type of church that I grew up in.
sure.
What I like to call the Christians.
Right. Do you want to shame a single mom, or do you want to lift her up and support her in her endeavor to raise great kids and to be able to support them and to be able to give them nice things? It's just so many pieces are still bizarre, but it's so much like home, and just it was just so bizarre for it to be so familiar that first day I walked in there and having never met anybody. And it was,
Again, that's where you were meant to be.
I guess, I take a men's group from there twice a year camping. We live at the beach, so there's not a lot of camping happening. There's a lot of surfing. There's a lot of burning, tanning, swimming, anything in the water. But to get us out into the wilderness, camping for a weekend, doing some hiking, like just getting away and being together as guys, doing some guy stuff, talking about the hard stuff. Like, my kid just did this at school, and like my instinct is to discipline him this way, but I think there might be a better way. What do you guys think? Or, someone's going through something with their marriage and someone else can relate. It gives us that opportunity to separate from everybody, have that privacy, just kind of discuss as men, like, this is where we're at and how can we be better? And, so hiking as like another activity, it's a great thing. You get out into the woods, that air is so clean and just peaceful. It's just completely different from the lights and sirens and what we go through in a daily basis, and it's wild. So within the book, I encourage to have that support network, have your outside activities, and also to have a quick catchphrase, because you made a comment earlier about the general public doesn't understand what we do and how we do it, and that they enjoy the war stories. So one of
Yes.
the hard things for me during a younger period after having the worst call of my life was people asking me in convenience stores, like, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? To go back to that scene, holding back this child's mother and not letting her near him, it's not anything I wanted to do anymore. I didn't want to have to go through and catalog these runs and, what's the worst thing that I've seen. So it got to a point, EMS isn't known for, being in Forbes magazine. We're not going to be up there with Bill Gates, passing out checks. So my catchphrase, someone asked me that right away, is just my paycheck. And I can kind of cut short a conversation that never should have started in the first place. But people don't understand. They see the dramas on TV, they see the excitement, they see the thrill, and they want a piece of that.
But not every.
But they don't understand that.
Not every story's a happy ending.
Exactly.
Yeah, this isn't Hollywood. There's no script.
No.
It's going to come out right. It may not. You never know. So, yeah,
Yep.
mine, it actually ended up sending me to a shrink's office, but my phrase was, I intermingle in people's nightmares daily. And that was what I come up with. And one of the supervisors flagged me and said, you need to go talk to somebody. And I was like,
right.
What? It's the truth. That's
Yep.
When you're having a bad day, hey, I show up. So,
yep. And I mean, that's kind of the dark humor too that I referenced earlier. Like,
yes,
the stuff that's funny or entertaining to us is not always going to resonate with the general public. I talk in the book about, coming home excited from work to sit down at the dinner table and talk about my day. And like the coolest part of my day is like freeing up a clogged trach when this mucus plug with like 6 different colors of green that I've never seen before comes flying out. Well, at that point, everybody else sitting at that dinner table has just lost their appetite. I was worried about you, Andy. I'm glad to see you're smiling and laughing, because I didn't think you were with us anymore.
I do that stuff all the time too.
I don't need you to calm down over there. You're getting a little bit rowdy.
Yeah. My wife's a scrub nurse, and me being a paramedic, so the kids at our dinner table, I think they got used to it. They can pretty much live through anything. Sure. It was funny you say that. The other day, my grandchild, he has this habit of where he will get so mad and worked up that he will eventually projectile vomit. And so he's over in the corner, pitching his temper tantrum, screaming, kicking his feet, jumping up and down. I'm at the dinner table. I'm just sitting there eating my dinner. And all of a sudden, he just projectile vomits. And everybody turns and looks at me. I'm like, what? We got seconds? And I was like, this is like a normal day at work. And they're like, doesn't this bother you? And I'm like, no, why should it? So, yeah, I get it. My daughter was like, you're just weird. I'm like, yeah,
is he bleeding? No? All right, he's good.
Yeah, he's not screaming anymore. It's quiet. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
So the book title, The Double-Edged Sword, is actually kind of a play on words. It's not actually about a weapon. It's not about a sword itself. It's just taking that word sword and breaking it into S and word, because in EMS, we've been expected from the public, from supervision, from ourselves, to save everybody. And when that time comes that we ourselves need to be saved, it seems like there's just hasn't been a good tradition of resources available to us. So double-edged S word. We save, but it's hard for us to be saved when we need it. And it sounds like, especially with your story, Glenn, like you needed transport at that point, and they were so hands off. Like,
drive yourself to the hospital.
yeah, it's just hard to wrap your mind around that. Like, after so many years of service, all of a sudden it's like, nope, we can't talk to you, we can't touch you, we can't. And I just,
if anything were to make you feel more like a number, I feel like it would be that.
Oh, I was definitely a number. The chief actually said, and it was great coming up in litigation, that he actually said it, that I was the reason they didn't have a Station 44. I was like, no, that's on you, not me. Yeah, and I don't think the chief, well, that chief I do, but I don't think the big chief was a bad guy. I think he was a Christian. I think he was a good man. I think he was doing what the city made him do. But I saw him on the news the other day. There was my incident. Shortly thereafterwards, we had a line of duty death. And then 2 weeks ago, we had one firefighter shoot another firefighter in quarters. My chief looks like he's 80 years old now. And I thought about that kid. It really hit me hard because I was like, well, I haven't seen him in a while. We haven't talked to it because we couldn't, obviously. And I was like, he needs to get out. There's too much on him right now. And it just hit me because he looked like he was 100 years old. Didn't even look like the same man I knew. If I hadn't been watching the news conference, I would have never probably recognized it was my chief. And this stuff we wear is heavy.
It is.
Especially when you become an officer and you're responsible for men, because you got to bring them home too. So
not just physically heavy too.
Oh yeah, no. And are you an officer now, Chris?
No.
Did you want to be an officer?
That was a very firm no.
No. I wanted to be tailboard trash my entire career. I'll be quite honest with you. I wanted to jump off the hose and first in the door.
I love the job that I do.
Yes.
I love the connections with patients. More recently, like the patients that allow it or ask for it, just to be able to give a real quick prayer with them or whatever before going into the ER and seeing, like, first of all, the shock that they've been offered, or in a case last week where the EMT offered the patient that we would pray with her. So I stood there quietly and he starts squeezing my hand like, all right, that's your cue to start. And I'm like, all right. Like, what I'm seeing now is even more exciting than like the last 23 years, because I look at where we're at in society as a whole. And while, yeah, there is a lot of physical ailments, but I think that there's a lot of just spiritual well-being that is also diminishing, that is leading to a lot of the physical ailments, like psychosomatic disorders, if you will, that, we have the ability to give medications for X, Y, and Z, but we skip over the person. We're really good at treating the body, but sometimes we miss the person. And just recently having these little connections with the patients, their families, and having that quick moment to just be able to give a couple quick words, and just seeing the reactions and stuff has just been even more rewarding. And I don't want to go to a position where, like, I sit at a desk and or I'm expected to, like, supervise and stand back. Like, I wholeheartedly enjoy making those connections and treating the people. There's probably going to come a time eventually that my body's going to say, how does that song go? My heart's telling me go, but my body is telling me no. There's going to be a time that, like, jumping in and out of ambulances is just not going to be
It's
thing that
not
my
a
joints want
human
to do
anymore.
anymore.
Yeah,
Right. And when
it's
the
not
body
a
says
human.
stop,
You better stop.
Yeah,
sure,
and
maybe
like I
that's a time for supervision or consulting, but no, in the meantime, like I love what I do way too much to pull myself out of the field.
I'm with you. Like I said, I fully intended to be tailboard trash my entire career. I mean, I'd ride the box. I'd ride, I'd do the tailboard trash. I refused to drive because they weren't paying me for it. And they're like, well, it's part of your job. I'm like, no, it's actually not. So, so you're going to pay me to do, see, you're paying me to be a firefighter. You're paying me to be a medic. Now you want me to be a driver. That's too much responsibility. Then you want me to sit in and be an acting officer, and you're not giving me any raise. And that was one of the balk things I had. But
Where's the dough?
well, I mean, you're right. There's no job like this in the world.
Yeah.
It's the best job you'll ever have in your life, and it can also be the worst job too. But one of the things I taught my students, because I did a lot of teaching in one of the departments, there's no pill for being a person. That person that you look at, where they're drunk, they're homeless, they're a drug addict, they get sick too. There's no pill to be a human. Go be a human. Treat that person like a human and relate. And and there's magic moments on the units and stuff. So, and then there's times where we want to choke each other on the box. So, choke your partner or your crew. So, but how long did it take you to write the whole thing all together? Actually, Chris, I wanted to ask you
that. The accident happened in February and it was published in April.
Okay.
Wow.
That's cool.
That was organizing it, bringing in some of the stories to back the material, and then sending it out to an editor who was actually real fun to work with, because the first thing she asked me was, how do we market this? She's like, this is a memoir. This is absolutely like a Christian spiritual book. She's like, what bookshelf do you picture this on? And I
front row.
said all of them. I mean, why not? I don't like, she wanted to edit to a certain genre, and none of us that do this job fit into a particular genre. I mean,
if somebody's interested in a memoir, it's a memoir. If somebody's interested in nonfiction, it's nonfiction. Somebody's interest in Christian self-help, Christian self-help.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We don't fit one box,
No.
Because we never, from day to day, we don't have a clue. I keep saying we, like, what part of this, but what we're gonna do. I mean, go to work and you may not call an entire 24-hour shift. It does happen rarely, but then there's other days where it's everything from alarm bells to cardiac arrest and car wreck. You're just like, what the hell's next? So you never know. And putting it all in paper, I can't imagine that's such a short. Had you ever done anything like this before?
No.
Anybody near you, or?
No.
Wow. That is awesome.
I did laugh in my English professor's face about 10 years ago when I submitted my research paper, and she's like, you're going to be published one day. I was like, what? No, I'm not. So I sent her a book.
Did you get a response back?
Told you
oh my gosh, yes. It's actually kind of funny. She, I sent her an email ahead of the book, and had said that you're not going to remember me. I'm probably just another student. And she's like, no, I do remember you. And you wrote a book review about this book that you were reading, and I still use it as an example for how this should be done in the class. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. Like, I didn't want to be a legacy in your class. I didn't like English. I didn't like composing stuff. I didn't like the research aspect. Now here I am writing research papers with so much biblical material that I've gone the majority of my life without having an appreciation for, and now writing stuff that I never thought I'd be writing. And it's, again, just mind blowing, this crazy path. And it's pretty
Now
awesome.
you'll be going to be your guest speaker in her class.
I'm open to it.
Just, hey, this is the one I told y'all about.
Yeah.
Those papers suck. This is the one that did the great one. This is what you gotta be.
Then she's going to look at you and say, remember, I said, I told you so.
Exactly. I was just going to say, someday I have to give her the opportunity to laugh in my face. It's only fair.
Absolutely.
Let
That's
her return
great.
the favor.
Have you had a lot of success marketing it?
Using the ordinary platform like that Amazon provides, and Google Ads and stuff, it was definitely helpful. I think that the best thing that I had done was joining different LinkedIn groups that were EMS in nature, from both the administrative, professional, educational side of it to the field side of it, and just being able to pass this around. And I think the most mind-blowing experience was having a couple of the chaplains from, I think it's New South Wales ambulance in Australia, reach out and talk to me about kind of how they work as their chaplains and some of the ways that they have their programs set up, and some of the ways that they've been addressing this stuff. And to have, an Australian with a PhD talk to me and ask me questions about the book was very, very humbling. Like, I absolutely would not have expected that in a million years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but a lot of word of mouth, and then LinkedIn had been very, very helpful to get the book into the right hands.
Do you have a lot of success with the interaction whenever you do stuff on LinkedIn?
For the most part, when you say like the interaction, like, I'll make a post, and like most recently, here's the book that you didn't know you needed. Here's your opportunity to save a life. I'll post one of them maybe once a quarter, and definitely get a few really good hits out of it. But I ended up going back through, and I created a whole class that I teach remotely based on the book. It's The Double-Edged Sword, The Unintentional Lessons. So after going back through and reading my book and really like wrapping my head around what I did, I ended up pulling chunks of the material and applying it to more broader audiences. So talking about being locked down in 2020, like one of the big issues that we had in that year was an increase in domestic violence, because couples that had been separated throughout the day are now stuck together. And
I was
so
about
I
to go
pulled
the severe lack of toilet paper.
also that, but I pulled out of the TikTok trend that, if you were on a Zoom call for like a company meeting, and you were in a bad situation at home and you needed help, you were to put your hand up like this, tuck your thumb, and wrap your fingers, and that was going to be the distress sign, and somebody would send help to you. And it was a nonverbal gesture that got kind of trendy, but I don't think that it reached as far and wide as it should have. So I made sure to incorporate that into the class, and the hotline for domestic violence.
That's good.
Touching on just developing our empathy, because you can do this job if you come in here looking at the cells, the tissue, the body systems that you need to treat, and you need to put this chemical in to get this reaction. And if you are successful, great. If you're not successful, you do it again later. If you come in with the very like see this, do this attitude, you're gonna avoid a lot of heartache, but you're gonna be kind of a zombie, really, approaching the job that way. So I found a great video that kind of demonstrates just seeing things from the patient's perspective and different people's perspectives, to try to kind of hone in on that empathy, which was definitely something that I had lacked pretty significantly.
Yeah, it's different when you're the patient.
Yeah.
when you're the patient, you're like, wait a minute, this is totally wrong. So yeah. Chris, I just realized we've kept you for so long, and I didn't intend to do this, but just enjoying the conversation.
This has happened quite a few times. It's totally fine.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure, and I still want to pick your brain and see if you got any cool challenge coins too before you.
Oh, all right, absolutely.
Yeah,
So when I was 12 years old, 26 years ago, I went to this camp cadet put on by Pennsylvania State Police, and it was like a summer camp for a week that you go to, and you did PT in the morning, and you had to keep your barracks tidy for inspections every day, and then as a team, as a platoon, you had different sports throughout the day, different classes throughout the day. They'd bring in like Civil Air Patrol to present to you. They'd bring in the urban search and rescue team to show you all their cool stuff that they did. And it was just a really neat experience for a pre-team. And so 20 some years later, I ran into the trooper that is now in charge of it and ended up receiving a Pennsylvania State Police.
Oh, nice.
Camp Cadet Challenge coin, which is kind of near and dear because if there's a residency restriction, I'm in trouble. I'm going to have to pull some favors or beg really, really hard to get my son into the program once he is old enough to do so. I was talking about the Australians. When I was in the Army, we were deployed to Egypt, and our mission was to oversee the Gulf of Aqaba between Egypt and Israel, because the Sinai Peninsula, since the Bible, has been a piece of land that has been fought over for years. And finally, in 1985, Carter came out and did this peace treaty and said, if you guys cannot keep this a demilitarized zone, we will help you. So the multinational force and observers was born, and it's different countries providing different support units to this region to help them maintain their peace. And it's a very successful peacekeeping mission, with participation by Fiji, Norway, Australia, Canada. Hungarians were our police.
Wow.
Paraguay and Uruguay did a lot of the like fuel services, building maintenance. U.S. we did a lot of observation outposts, just a lot of like cavalry type recon type work there. So we got this map of the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt.
Oh, that is cool.
Presented by the Chief of Staff.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
That's neat.
And my favorite one that I can't share any stories on, Special Operations Command Europe. And that was presented by a 2-star general. So back when I enjoyed my evenings at the VFW or American Legion, this was my free drink ticket.
Yep. You're
So,
not
yeah.
gonna be at VFW. Come on now.
I mean, they're great organizations.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
And the food is usually really good. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of equated it to going to grandma's for a Sunday dinner. Like, you got in there, and if you wanted chicken pot pie, you got a chicken pot pie like grandma made. It wasn't something that was just frozen, thawed, and served to you. It's something that had been working in that crock pot all day.
It was made with love.
Absolutely. And it was always so cheap. It was awesome.
Yeah, they're really a lot of fun. I I've been to a couple of them here in East Tennessee, and they're awesome. So actually, I think in Georgia too. I'm not a veteran, but I was invited in by veterans and stuff as friends. So actually, I think they may have even sponsored one of our dart teams when our department had a team. We threw darts, so it's a good reason to go out and throw sharp, pointy things. So.
Oh, nice.
So, but yeah, it was that was actually kind of cool. It was I don't know how many teams there were. It seems like each station had a team, so there was quite a few teams, and VFW would host it like every other Wednesday or something. And yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
Andy, I haven't traumatized you, have I? Okay.
Nope, you're fine.
It takes a lot, and he's shy too. So we work on Andy every week. So
Sometimes watch out once I get going. Can't stop, can we, Glenn?
Well, that's the one nice thing about us is we're all spread out. Cheyenne's in West Virginia. I'm in Knoxville now, but a lot of times home is Atlanta. Andy is up in Maryland, so this is how we get together. So
Awesome.
Well, Chris, I am so glad you come on. And I'm sorry we kept you. I just looked at the clock and realized how long we kept you. I apologize for that.
No, it's so great.
We do this every Friday night. We're not just a bunch of guys and gals that sit around and tell war stories, although we do that. We're a support group for each other. You're more than welcome to come back any Friday night you want to.
Oh, great.
And before you get out of here, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you, get your book.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to ask you, I do the Thin Line Rock Station. Obviously, they're one of our sponsors here on the show. You should send them a message about seeing about getting an ad on the radio. I'll be glad on my show to talk about it. So.
Oh, neat. Thank you.
Because we're all big on helping each other. When you come home in the morning and you grab the bottle of Jack, it's time to to talk about things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've all done it. So, all right, Chris, tell us where we can find you. You get your website up there.
All right, so the website's underneath my picture. It's www.ChristopherTurnbull, turn like a left turn, bull like a rodeo.com. And the book's available on Amazon, The Double-Edged Sword.
All right. And it's also on Audible, you said?
It is on Audible. Absolutely.
It's already in my list.
Uh-oh.
She'll leave you a review, I'll promise you. So,
just disclaimer, I don't pay for the therapy that might follow the book.
Work does.
But I encourage it.
Yeah, so I will eventually start journaling and working on things. It's just not my time yet. So, and I still, Chris, have not figured out what those voices in my head that was telling me don't get bit. That I still don't have a clue what that was.
It was the aliens.
I mean, I probably have a really good theory. It's probably a real solid theory, but maybe save that for another show.
Yeah. Well, no, it's true. That's one of the reasons I started my paranormal show, because I was like, okay, is it the guardian angels? Is it my ancestors? Was it my whatever you call it? Our awareness when we're in the field, our heightened alert, because we're always on a heightened alert for 360 for things around us, And was it that? What was it? And so, yeah, that was why I started my paranormal show on Wednesdays, talking to people.
It was future you reaching back to past you to let you know.
Well, and I didn't tell you this. Afterwards, as I'm looking at my hand, the same voice in my head said, it'll be okay. At that moment, it wasn't okay. And it said it'll only hurt for a little while. That didn't help me a whole lot. And I'm thinking and don't take this the wrong way. But
future me would be going, I told you, stupid.
Well, if it was my guardian angel, why didn't they be a little more specific? Look out behind you.
It's the dumb.
You're the slow fat one they always pick off.
If Jesus spoke in parables, we cannot expect our guardian angel to be specific.
Well, at least he didn't yell duck. So then I'd have been really confused. But yeah, like I said, I couldn't tell you if it was a man, a woman, just there, and what it was, I don't know.
It just was.
And the funny thing was when I told the doctors that, I was like, it's not like I have, we're automatically defensive as paramedics. It's not like I have that kind of thing.
I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. It's just.
And they're like,
it's not that I'm hearing voices,
but I'm kind of hearing voices.
Well, no, actually, I had a doctor tell me, what was it? Sick people hear things, crazy people see things. I think that was how the psychiatrist worded it. And I was like, there's a lot of truth in that, having been out in the field for a while. So.
Well, as my dad would always say, it's perfectly fine to talk to yourself as long as you don't start answering yourself.
I can have a good argument with myself every day. All right, Chris, I'm keeping you here.
You're great.
Come back any Friday. We welcome you. I will make sure in the show description that we've got all the info on how to get in touch with you. And I will also try and get Jason in touch with you. I could get a strange email from Tennessee. And so, Andy, you got any questions? You've talked too much.
No, not really.
Okay. All right. Well, and does your department that you work for have challenge coins, Chris?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
All right. Well,
Ooh.
Maybe we can talk you into showing us one of those sometime. So
maybe one day.
All right, Chris, have a good night. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the book. Thank you for the great conversation. Like I said, I just looked how long we've been talking. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. This is great.
All right. Well, you're welcome.
Thank you for being here.
Any Friday you're bored, hop on in here. We promise
all right.
we'll have a good time. So.
All right. Take care, you guys.
See ya.
You too. Bye, Chris. What a great show. I did not realize until I looked down. I was like, oh, my goodness.
I know when you looked at the clock and I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah,
I think I happened to look down at one point and it was like 10 after, and I was like, he's still talking pretty good, so he must be fine.
Yeah. I only like to keep people an hour because I feel like if you take an hour out of somebody's day, that's enough, So, but it was great, and he's going to be added to the list of books that I need. So, I have a growing collection. So, I should have asked him how to score an autograph. Or maybe I'll email and ask him that. So, I will try and get his info. We need to talk about that off the air, Shay. We need to get some people's addresses and get some coins in the mail to them. So we do have to do that. So, well, I said I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. So anybody that's watching, I am coming up with a new coin, thanks to our good friend Matt. He has taken care of me. And Andy, you're going to love this one. This is for the College World Series. I've made one for the Tennessee I'm making one for the Tennessee Volunteers.
Ooh.
Let me figure out how to share this. Share screen. Yes, share screen. My computer's being difficult. And we were not going out, by the way, on Jurg's radio. So I turned the feed off. We were only sending dead air, which was annoying. I've got to figure out what that problem is. Oh, let me do this. There you go, Andy.
That's neat.
Matt is adding his special touch to it. It'll be 3D with the bats. And, of course, obviously the shape of the field. And then you got the actual diamond there. And, no, go back. That's the show picture. When you, down here at the bottom, this little piece right there.
Mm-hmm.
It swivels around, and inside of it is the national championship trophy.
Nice.
NCAA. So And in the back, it's kind of hard to picture what it's going to look like because these bats will be 3D and it'll be sitting on this. So this painted section is really only this. So yeah, we're wrapping up the final details of that coin. I hope to have it out real soon. So,
Cool.
yeah, my first idea to Matt. What was funny is, and you guys know how Matt is. He's so creative. My first idea was I wanted a home plate with maybe the baseball bats behind him and like the big T on the front. And I wanted the T to slide open and inside be the trophy. And he's like, oh, we can do so much better than that. And I'm like, what? I thought that was pretty creative.
Yeah. What's better than this?
Yeah. How's that work? So, yeah, he's been a great help. So he also, I saw, introduced a Star Wars coin, I believe he's got coming up, doesn't he? Wasn't that in the group chat?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so yeah, he's got one coming up. So when he gets back from daddy duty, he'll update us on all of them. So, well, Andy,
He'll probably play a trick on us and set the baby in front of the screen instead of him.
well, you saw
That's
that.
not Sheldon.
You saw the pictures in the group chat we have of the baby with the Grin and Guardian gang onesie on, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
That was cool.
Yeah, that Cheyenne did that for us. She's sweet.
Yeah, she did a great job on that.
Yeah. So we got a future.
You're gonna start your own clothing line for the show now.
I can pop off some designs as long as somewhere else wants to print them.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
just
she
add
is-
us. I'll add us some onesies to our Shopify.
There you go. Yeah. Hey, it was great. Free merchandise advertising. So
There you go.
she's
via baby that everybody is gonna want to look at.
Yeah, she's adding to her shop. We're coming up with a T-shirt. I think. Did you get it totally designed, or so she's got a T-shirt on there for the Grin and Guardian gang that y'all
You
need to check out.
can order it now. Actually, it's already up on the website.
Wow, you were.
Woohoo.
You don't play around with that merchandise. So
Between her and AI, we got it made.
yeah. Well, the link is in the description for the show merchandise. Of course, we have merchandise for the paranormal guys and the Misfits too. Do we have Misfit stuff?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I know we've got. Let's see. So there's the T-shirt that we just printed. We've got a Grin and Guardian gang hoodie, paranormal guys mug, bikini, hoodie. There's a Misfit shot glass. I think that's a Misfits wine glass and a Misfits bucket hat, Misfits t-shirt, hoodie, sport cat strappy bikini.
Oh God. Here's the models for that.
It's not for me. They don't come in that size. So.
Then there's some regular sport cat shirts, tumbler, hat, hoodie. Then there's another Grin and Guardian gang shirt, drawstring backpack, mug, hat. You can get a different Paranormal Guys t-shirt. You can get yourself some Paranormal Guys boxers and hat.
Nice.
Jeez.
Nice. And if you have a special request, I'm sure that she can figure that out too. So
Whip it up.
Whip it up.
All right.
Ching ching.
Cheyenne, what have we got coming up in the near future?
Well, tomorrow's show should be a fun one.
Yeah, Andy, we want to extend the invitation because you've had your account hacked a few times, so you have experience with people pretending to be you. I remember when you begged me for $20 one time. I'm like, what the hell is he begging me for?
Yeah.
money?
That lasted how many weeks?
that went on for a while. So
Yeah, tomorrow's episode for the Misfits is about catfishing.
Hmm.
yeah, when I first met Andy, he was begging for money. I was like,
Gotcha.
well, I mean, maybe he needs $5. I don't know. So,
Well, at least you got a smaller amount. My old shop teacher, they asked him for like $50,000.
they probably saw him as a firefighter paramedic. They're like, this guy ain't got $5.
Money.
He wasn't too happy. He showed up at the house and asked what was wrong.
Oh.
Who do we have on Wednesday? That's not on my calendar yet.
Well, it's because I didn't know if we were going to have a show. Wednesday, we have two guests. We have, her name is Glenda Benavides. Is that correct? She is a singer. And then we have Anthony. Oh, I got his email somewhere here. Danny Anthony. He is an author and novelist. He's written paranormal book, and then he wrote a arson novel that is pretty. I've read the reviews. I haven't read the book. Pretty amazing. There's people asking him in the Amazon reviews if this was based on a real story. So
Good
was
author
like,
never tells.
he's like, I hope not. So yeah, so we got him on Wednesday.
And then Friday we have Brandon Collins. Who is it? AI and military speaker.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
we'll be back here farting around on Saturday.
Yeah. I believe next Friday, I think Matt returns next Friday. I hope. So, not that I don't want him doing bad things, but hope he comes back because I enjoy his input with the coins. So, plus I kind of miss hearing from him. So, but Andy, you want to come over to the Misfits tomorrow, or are you booked on another show?
No, I'll be here tomorrow since Brenda's show got booted.
Yeah, she's going to talk about that. Her whole show got catfished, Cheyenne.
Big time. Passwords and everything.
Should this be something we talk about off air?
Yeah, well, I think she's going to talk about it, but they have her scheduled shows. So we're just gonna watch and see what they put out.
We'll have a watch party in between.
So she's gonna be on as a misfit as well, and then we have a new young lady we're introducing as a misfit. So we should have a pretty full house. It should be a great show.
Yeah, Brenda thinks she knows what happened, but that's still under investigation.
Yeah. So that part I'm not going to talk about. But yeah. So we're not sure if she was hacked, catfished, or pirated. Is that the right word? Pirated? Maybe. So.
All right.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way: from a lady that goes to the hospital with a viper attached to her leg, can we expect anything unusual from her?
No, of course not.
You should ask Chris if he ever on that call. That damn snake would have been dead. So, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. It was a great show. Make sure to check out Chris's book. The link is in the description. And Cheyenne will be sure to tell us how the Audible review is. So.
I still think he should have read it himself.
Yeah, he did have a good voice, though. Everybody have a great night. We will talk to you soon.
See ya.